Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming to this week's edition of the North Coast Journal. My name is Tanya Shrum, and we are joined as usual by news editor Thad Greenson and arts and features editor Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome to you both, and how are you doing this week?
Doing well. How are you?
I am doing well. Has everybody got wonderful plans for this weekend?
Probably watching the ball drop on the computer screen. Having a little dance party in our kitchen. Might be as wild as it gets at our house.
Hey, the intimate celebrations sometimes are the best.
We do a whole thing at my house, which involves a day of grazing. We put out a ton of food. It's like charcuterie plus, and it's just a giant spread of food that we just graze on all day. And then we do traditional Japanese soba at just before midnight to ring in the new year. And then we pass out and go to sleep because we're getting old.
I think that sounds fun and wonderful. I think that all sounds great. I will be in Trinidad at the town hall dancing myself into the midnight hour.
We need pictures.
Yes, I will provide them.
There's lots of stuff going on, and I hope we'll get to that later. But we've got lots and lots of fun New Year's choices in the paper this week.
That is definitely what we're going to get to. But first, I would like to turn our attention to Thad and let us know what's coming to this week's cover story, the compilation.
Yeah, so this week, as we do every final edition of the year, is our top 10 stories. So it's the top 10 stories of 2023. And I got to say to start out that this is the first year in several years that COVID is not one of our top 10 stories. And we would be remiss not to say that COVID is still, in fact, a thing that is impacting our lives. And the Journal, as a workplace, has been inundated with COVID cases over the last week. So we kind of got this issue out by the skin of our teeth. But just wanted to take that opportunity to remind folks, COVID's a thing. Go get boosted if you haven't. And, most importantly, if you are feeling any kind of sick at all, stay home. Don't bring it to work.
Or any events for that matter, especially as we go into a weekend where all of us are going to want to shake a tail feather. So
very true,
stay home.
True. Definitely not Trinidad Town Hall on New Year's Eve. But so I really wanted to get that out. It felt, as we were kind of going through the process of getting this paper out the door and COVID was once again, so acutely impacting our function, it felt like an omission not being in our top 10. But, different papers do their top 10 lists different ways. Some go by kind of the most popular or what got the most clicks. We try to really not look at specific stories, but mostly look at kind of topics we've covered, things we've covered through the year, and kind of think about when folks look back on 2023, 10 years from now, what will they think were kind of the most impactful things or the most memorable things that happened that year. So that's kind of how we put together our list. And it was, it's always an interesting exercise. Some years it feels like there's just too many crazy news stories, those kind of one-offs that are just so memorable. And some years it's much more thematic, and I think this year kind of fell into that category. So I kind of wrote a short intro to it, and I said that in many ways kind of 2023 was a year of transitions for Humboldt County. So we looked at what's going on in the Klamath River, and then the news that came later in the year about the Eel River, that Humboldt County is kind of transitioning to a place where rivers are undammed, which is exciting news on the environmental front. and much less exciting, very kind of harrowing news is that we're also, transitioning into a community where more and more of us are hungry, or more and more of our neighbors are hungry. Food insecurity and poverty have always been, entrenched issues here, and they've grown just much more so, really over the last few years, but kind of acutely in 2023. We had a number of instances where Food for People, the big food network and food bank for Humboldt County, kind of issued pleas to the community for additional support, and that they're kind of getting hit by both sides, both in terms of seeing an increased need of more people in need of their services, and then also seeing fewer people able to donate and volunteer, which are kind of the lifebloods of that organization. So it was definitely a story, an important story that we wanted to highlight. We also wrote about the freeing of Jeff Woodkey, which seems like it must have been 15 years ago, but it was in fact just at the beginning of this year. But Jeff Woodkey, as folks might remember, is the McKinleyville man who was held hostage in West Africa for I think about 6 years, and then was kind of out of the blue released, and it's still almost a year later now from his release. It's still kind of unclear exactly what machinations led to his release. The U.S. government has insisted that it didn't make any concessions or pay any ransom for him. We know the government of Niger was very much involved in getting him released, but we don't really know what happened there. But I'll never forget kind of covering, that's one of those, one-off stories that I was talking about earlier. But I remember just kind of sitting in the church in Arcata where he was giving his first public comment since being released at a small press conference, and just how surreal that moment was, and how it really felt like something out of a movie to see him not just free and released and talking about his experience, but doing so in a way where it was obvious that while extremely traumatic and trying, that he kind of emerged with most of his faculties and was able to talk about his experience with some insight. Yeah.
And you're right, that did seem like that had to be 2 or 3 years ago.
That's the other thing about going through this list, is that there's always things, and I think Jen will touch on this with her list in a minute, but there's always these things that you're like, you just feel like they were forever ago. And especially with, when you work for a newspaper, everything is week to week, and you're constantly kind of moving on from one edition to the next. And in fact, we do this, 52 times a year. And
one thing that is just being really vague about is the actual process for putting together these stories, is that he makes an initial list that we are all supposed to consider, think about, etc., over a series of weeks. But we all sort of like ignore it until he prods us again and again. And then finally at the last, well, not the last minute, but that desperate tone in his voice, then we all go in and kind of, but there's a lot of debate about what is an impactful story. We talk about the difference between what people are talking about and, as Thad was saying, what people are going to remember and what changes life here in Humboldt.
I also think that it's interesting, and perhaps this happens every year and I haven't been paying close enough attention, but that the list that we're going to discuss of Jennifer's kind of can interweave with the top 10 from the journal itself.
Except I will say one of, we tend to go like good news, bad news, or whatever. This is the one time of year when I'm really on the bad news side of things, and Thad has an opportunity to talk about more positive general changes, like the move toward undamming and things like that. And, I think it was a wise choice of his to bring up, instead of kind of summarizing all the terrible things that happened to kind of remove rights, make life scarier for LGBTQ plus people. Instead, he was like, we need to talk about resilience in these communities and how they did not hide and they did not give up and still had events and still, welcomed people. And I think those kinds of how we look back on the year, how we frame it, I think is also important.
Jennifer, that's a wonderful insight. And Thad, do you have anything else you'd like to add to our cover story this week?
I think that I guess two things. One is we've started, I think, just in the last couple of years of putting in getting in the practice of adding a kind of a bonus story, which might not be, the most impactful, but is something that's memorable and is a bit of like good, heartening news. And so this week, this year we did Tori McConnell getting Miss Indian World?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's the title, the Miss Indian World Crown, which was just a wonderful story that Jen wrote, and she did a wonderful summary of it. So I would definitely want to plug that. And then I think that where we kind of landed on the last story in our top 10 list is, and this really goes to impactful, is just kind of the offshore wind project really starting to take some shape and becoming less of a hypothetical and more of a potential reality. It's not definitely going to happen, but we're starting to study the impacts of both turning the Samoa Peninsula's former pulp mill site into kind of a state-of-the-art marine terminal, and what that's going to look like. And then we're also just starting this process of studying like what this actual farm 20 miles off our shore will look like and what its impacts will be. And so it's kind of a pivot point for Humboldt County of really taking a hard look at these things and wondering what life will be like if we go down this road. And so that's just kind of a really interesting inflection point in what's going to be, a years-long process if it comes true.
And definitely a good jumping off point into the 2024s months to come.
Yeah, I guess that's the other thing. So, I mean, so many, we put these arbitrary bookends of what, the top 10 stories of a year are, but so many of them trickle from one year into the next. And so, I mean, guaranteed dam removal is going to be on that list next year when the Klamath is free flowing.
Well, Thad, thank you so much for another great year of North Coast Journal editing and stories. I encourage everybody to pick up this week and every week's North Coast Journal and read the complete story. And now we're going to turn our attention for the last time this year to Jennifer and find out what's going on the arts and features beat.
So it is once again time, along with the top 10 stories, for our annual top 10 Dick Moves of 2023.
Dun, 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 dun.
I love this time of year, partly because, at some point, like a couple weeks before the issue comes out, I like to throw it out on social media and be like, hey, putting together the top 10 Dick Moves, what are your thoughts? And, it's important that we think about the context of Dick Moves. We are talking about the, popular nomenclature for when you do something selfish, unnecessarily mean, like Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown's Dick move, right?
Classic.
Indeed.
It's just mean-spirited and it's unproductive, but she has to do it. So I always make a call out and people put in suggestions, etc. But I love the sweetest people in Humboldt sending me direct messages and being like, let me tell you about this person. And people who you think would never say a bad word, they're all like, what really made me mad this year? I love it.
One of the things I love is that this list has become so popular that now I get input unsolicited. I don't even write this list. And I'm at my kid's dance recital recently, and somebody pulls me aside and is like, hey, I know Jen's working on that column. Here's, kind of passes on a tip. Like, don't make sure she gets that in there.
Speaking of things that get in there, I was so mad last year. I filed the story, we went to press, and then I heard about this enraging thing that happened. And so it's in this year's column, even though it's not one of the top 10. You may recall, those of you who go to Sunny Brae Animal Hospital, they have this lovely rainbow bridge that they got sometime in the pandemic. They put it up, and it's a little bridge like you would have in a backyard garden, but they've painted it with rainbows, and it's a reference to a poem about a pet dying and sort of a lovely memorial about them crossing over into the next world on the Rainbow Bridge. And it's very sweet. And if you've ever lost a pet, that little bit of comfort that somebody understands what you're going through, right? And here's this physical manifestation of that care and that appreciation for our connection to animals. And some band of dick move loving people broke into the hospital and stole it last year, just after the Dick Moves list. They got it just under the wire.
We did not forget about you.
Right? We did not forget about you. So I called up this week, the animal hospital, and I was like, I just want to, double check my dates and everything. And they said, the darndest thing, a month or so ago, somebody brought it back. And I was shocked. When I talked to the manager over there, she was like, it's my gut feeling is that it's not the same people. The people who took it showed up on bicycles with a cart. This was all caught on the video camera. So it was a planned heist. And the people who dumped it off brought it in a truck and put it over the fence. We don't know if they found it. We don't know if they were contrite. We don't know if it was, and I'm hoping for a John Wick-like pet vengeance story. But it's back. And that kind of gave us hope. I don't know if all of the things on this year's list are similarly redeemable.
But they definitely grind the gears.
They definitely grind the gears.
So let's hit some of the other highlights of Dick Moves.
Some of them might be an actual crime, but it's not necessarily the crime itself, just like the theft of that bridge. Like the embezzling, right now, Nina Taffarella is being investigated by the FBI for allegedly embezzling from 2 organizations in Humboldt. But the thing that makes it a dick move instead of just a crime is that she allegedly stole from nonprofits. One of them being a nonprofit dance studio. That's right, little children in tutus. And the other being the county fair. All those little 4-H kids with their lambs and whatnot. Are you serious right now? Surely there are evil corporations ready to be stolen from. Somebody who cuts the tails off puppies, something. But no, I'm just asking you to pick your targets a little better. Some of them are repeat offenders, like, why can't we stop vandalizing the sanctuary garden in Arcata? It seems like the dumbest thing in the world to go and just deface something that is covered in sunflowers. Like, you have to know when you're doing the spray painting, God, this is a dick move. But still
that brings peace to veterans.
It's astounding.
No one's giving you karma points for that, buddy.
Absolutely. And the same thing with people who are still out here hunting with lead ammo. Mm-hmm. Last year, those same people were on the list because of the threat to condors. This year, they poisoned one. One of the condors, A6, whose indigenous name actually means I'm bashful. Gentle little soul that bird is, had to go be treated for lead poisoning. So I don't know what will make these people stop hunting with lead ammo. It's certainly the law is telling them, California law says you cannot hunt with lead ammo here. Yeah, dick move, guys. Some of the other ones were, Rex Bone on here twice. This is our first dick move double dip. He's in here for his comment about a restaurant owner serving topless at a fundraiser. She donated a dinner to raise money for a good cause, and he turned it into a moment of misogyny and mortification. So dick move, Rex. Likewise, I don't know, why do we maybe don't go to auctions. I don't know. Is it auctions that make him do these things? Because the auction for the rural county representatives of California, RCRC, is the auction at which he broke the rules, which are really easy. No guns, no live animals, no weed in the baskets for the auction. And he put a 9mm in there. Does that say Humboldt to you? And if it does it say Humboldt for the wrong reasons? Yeah.
We do not want to perpetuate the Netflix special of Humboldt.
Right? It's very Murder Mountain. It's not even like a hunting scope or something. Like it's, an accessory that might be. It's just a 9mm. That definitely was a dick move. But the winners this year, and of course, lots of people were like, hey, listen, don't forget the Toys for Tot thieves. Because yes, stealing the toys from the Toys for Tots truck, I don't know what special part of hell they send you to, but it's a straight up Grinch move. Indeed. It's worse than a dick move. It's a Grinch move. But our winner this year was actually, sorry, Rex, try again next year. Our winner was the Ferndale City Council. Because as awful as some of the public commenters were at their April meeting about the kindness resolution, lots of people were saying some very hateful and untrue things about the LGBTQ plus community, and really just fear-mongering and just doing the worst. That's all awful, but letting it go unchallenged really is a way to make the citizens of Ferndale, including the LGBTQ plus citizens of Ferndale and all the folks who visit, know that you don't care about them, which is ridiculous. And the people of Ferndale deserve better than that, for sure, than to have the worst people just kind of shouting down everyone else with no pushback. So because they neglected their duty, it's a cowardly dick move. And that one got number 1 this year.
And I think if we've learned anything today, it's that you really want to avoid Jennifer's List in the future. So it's not hard. It's not hard. Don't be despicable.
Although, to be honest, I've been on it twice.
It just occurred to me, is this the first year that we've not had a journal employee on the list?
We had, unfortunately, we were pushed off the list.
The bag could not contain any more.
Yes, we would have needed a bonus, I realize. Yeah, sorry. Next year. Try harder, journal staff.
Well, and before we wrap up to today, because everybody needs to pick up this week's journal and read this cover to cover so you can get all this information, the compilation, the dick moves, the whole 9 yards. I was going to try to not do any double entendre. Real quick, we do want to give a shout out to Colin.
Yes, Colin Yo has a really great set list this week. And normally he goes through a whole week. But as you know, first week of the new year, it's going to be pretty dead after New Year's because we need to recover. So he's got a couple of really great shows for pretty much any genre of music that you're into. So check out his column, The Set List. And then also, if you're looking for like family-friendly stuff, check out the calendar. Kali Koziris has rounded up things for grown-ups, for kids, for whole families to go and do, including a ball drop that is at 9 p.m. for those of us who need more sleep. Yeah, it's for children, but I'm also all for it.
Okay. Well, everybody have a great weekend. Thanks again to Jennifer and Thad for this year and every year. That wraps up this week. The current edition of the North Coast Journal is on newsstands right now. Pick up your copy or go to northcoastjournal.com. I am Tanya Schrum. Thanks for being with us, staying informed, and supportive of our wonderful North Coast community. Happy New Year!